Let's start with our first session of Dynamo from Zero to Hero. I will give the mic to Christoph.
Lovely, thank you, Nohat. Okay, guys, so before we actually start going into Dynamo, let's spend a few words on what Dynamo actually is, because I guess some people could have been here by accident and just had like a few words about it. So what Dynamo is a visual programming software in which you don't need any knowledge about coding to start putting together any scripts. It's working based on nodes, on little rectangular blocks that you connect with each other.
Yes.
With some strings, and this way you are creating a script that is actually doing something. Dynamo, since Revit 2020, I believe it comes together with Revit, so you don't have to download anything separately. You can find it inside of the Revit. I'll just share my screen with you. So when you have Revit, I just need to get, I'm sorry, it's just in my way. Under the Manage tab, Dynamo right here, Visual Programming, together with Dynamo Primer. So if you have installed Revit, then you definitely have the Dynamo available there. So let's hop on, let's open the Dynamo. And I'm gonna spend a few words on how Dynamo looks like and what you can find inside of it. So basically, as every single program, you get available tabs with menus where you can find plenty of options to personalize Dynamo to you. But let's create a new project, new files, so we can see what is happening. And just a quick disclaimer, because we know that recently some people had problems with operating with Dynamo, switching between graphs and 3D views, yes. That they are not able to switch the option of background preview. This is caused because of the graphical drivers and DirectX. So if you have problems with something like that, please look into those two elements. But let's continue. So Dynamo consists of few elements. As every software, as I said, there are tabs, which you can find all kind of options to personalize Dynamo for yourself. There's a toolbar right below it where you can create new files, open files, save or undo or redo any changes. And on the left side of the Dynamo, there's quite important tab, which is called the library. That's where we get from all of the nodes that we'll be working with when creating scripts. A few ways to navigate through it. You can either navigate through the folders, right here that you look through categories like geometry, where you can look for particular nodes under, for example, points, where we want to create any points. Then we are getting the node, and by clicking on it, it will show up. The node will show up on our canvas, so we can work with it. And the easy option is when you know what you're looking for, you can just simply use the search option. It's either on the top of the library, or you can right click and quickly start looking for something. Yes, libraries. There's also an option within libraries to download external libraries created by other users, which are basically packages, and they are listed under add-ons. We prefer to play without the add-ons because then we are sure that everybody can use those scripts no matter what setup they have. But of course, there's also an additional possibility of expanding the package of Dynamo. This is what you see, the big screen. It's your workplace. So it's a canvas where you are placing nodes, but it's also a 3D view as you see in the background. And there is a button right here to switch between those views. So when you're working with geometry, you can also preview it right here behind the canvas with the nodes. So you see what is happening inside of the Revit as well. Right below it, there's of course plenty of options to navigate through it, to zoom in, zoom out, and set the views properly for yourself, so you can navigate the canvas. And at the bottom, quite important part as well, there's an execution bar, which have an option to switch whether you want the script to run automatically all the time in your background, or you can only run it when you click button run. I suggest to always put it as manual when you are working with the script, because sometimes you might have a big script which could cause your Revit to crash when it's in automatic mode. Before I give you to Nuhat, who will show you how we create a very basic scripts, I would just love to say a few words about the nodes itself. because as I mentioned, the Dynamo is visual programming, so we'll be dealing not with code, but with blocks like this, which already have codes implemented inside of it behind what you see. So it's an easy way for you to understand it. You don't have to know any programming languages before. And the nodes consist of two sides. On the left side, there's always inputs, so what we put into the node to process it. And on the right side, they always give something out, so we can continue that chain of the script. So in this case, we are looking at a node called point by coordinates. So we would be creating a point, feeding that node with two different values, which would specify where is it located on x-axis and y-axis. As an outcome, we would receive the point. When you are hovering over whether it's a node or any inputs or output blocks, you will always get a lot of information about what the node is doing, what it requires for it to work, and what kind of format of output it will give out to you. So in this case, we are looking at descriptions, and it's clearly telling us that it's going to be a point in XY plane, and it's going to be created by two inputs, which we can see here. Yes, so there's basic stuff. Every node is constructed in the same way. Some of them might be missing output or input from time to time. That's because they are special nodes and they have that special function behind them. But I hope I made it clear for you, so you can follow along with Nuhat of how we are gonna create all the scripts in this program.
Yes, so thank you so much, Christoph, for this introduction. I hope now that you can more or less understand how the interface of Dynamo works and the workspace. So we could start with a very simple but very powerful script that works for us in Kia. So before I start with the script, I would like to briefly explain why or the concept of the script. And the idea is that I would like to develop a script right now that would change all my floors, all my walls, and my roofs to appear as black. So the reason why I want that to appear as black is because when we present our outline proposal drawings, ideally we are required to present them as black. So if I share my screen and show you more in depth what I'm talking about, this is just a Revit project I'm using as an example. So let's imagine right now that we need to create our outline proposal drawings. Right now, my walls are appearing as gray, and that is not correct for us in Kia, at least. Of course, it differs from different universities or academies, but over here, we need them to be black. So the way to do that, the way to make them appear black is using overrides in graphics, and we are all aware of that, I hope so. So the way to do that in Revit is quite simple. You just use VG for shortcut for visibility and graphics. You go for the walls, and then you change the cut pattern to be black from here. And I'll just do it fast so you could just visualize what we're going to do in Dynamos and see how it looks like. So this is how we want our floor plan to be. And the same thing applies if I go to a section view. As an example, I will see that even in my section view, my walls are also appearing as gray, and I want them to be black. Also, my roof is appearing white, which is not correct. Also, some of my floors are black, some are not. So it's a bit chaotic for me. So the way to do that in an efficient way, instead of going VG on each section and then changing the walls, roofs, and floors to have them as black. And instead of doing this, so I have now 4 sections, instead of doing it 4 times on the section views and then going to the floor plans and doing this on all of these floor plans, it will take some time. And for me right now, maybe I don't have many views open, but actually I have a lot of working views that I could collapse here. So I have around more than 100 views. So just imagine how much work that would cause me to fix just by using Revit alone. So the idea is to do the same function, to change all of these to appear as black, and to have my outline proposal drawings ready by using Dynamo. And that is what I'll be showing you today. So I will just undo the visibility and graphics so we get back the floor plan the way it was, and then we start with Dynamo. So to start up Dynamo, as Christoph mentioned, you go to the Manage tab, and it's always a plugin inside Revit, so you don't have to worry about downloading it or anything. It's always there in the Manage tab. If you have Revit 2020 or 2021. So if you don't, then it's great to update your Revit. So let's wait a little bit for it to load. But while it loads, if you have any questions at some point that are relevant to what I'm explaining, just raise your hand on Teams, and Christoph will address you and let you unmute yourself and talk. If you have questions that are not related to what I'm talking about, but also related to Dynamo, you could write them in the chat, and then we will have a Q&A in the end to talk about it in more depth. So I will open a new workspace so we could start developing the script together. So the first thing I want to do is I want to search for a script that is related to overrides, because what I'm doing is overriding my categories, which are walls, floors, and roofs, to be black. That's what I made clear before. So the way to search is either from here, as he said, or right-clicking. I would like to do it from here so I could show you what are the options that would appear. So if whenever you want to search for anything, always try to look for the keywords, because it's really important to know what you're typing, because the search option in Dynamo is a bit hectic sometimes. You don't always get things easily. You have to write the correct names all the time, which is a bit hard at first to get used to, but then you get used to it. So with time. So let's write overrides and see what we get. Okay, so I get a lot of things, and right now it could be a bit overwhelming for beginners to understand what is what and which one should I use for my case now. A good way to start as a beginner is to try to discover these nodes slowly. And eventually with time, when you start using Dynamo more, you will get introduced to those nodes. So don't worry about having to learn each one and the name of each one and all that. It comes with time, so it's not a problem. So for me right now, I will do a shortcut where I will tell you which one we need instead of going through each one. So we are going to use this node, and it's called Set Category Overrides. If I click on that, I will get the main node that I need in my case right now to develop this simple script. And it's basically very self-explanatory. So if I hover over it, I could see that some description pops up, and it's not very deep description for this case. It only says set category overrides. And it makes sense to have a short description because it's literally sets a category override. So you don't really need to understand more than that. But sometimes if I, let's say, choose another node, the description could be even more, right? So it depends on each node. But for this case, we're just using this one. So we should get the understand the idea of it. Yes. So with this node, we have 4 inputs, and they are views. We need to specify which views do we want to have black walls, black floors, and black roofs. Then we have the categories. What are the categories that we want to be black? And for us, it's walls, it's floors, and it's roofs. So these are the 3 categories that we need to just input here. Then we have the overrides, and the overrides is basically the black wall function, or the black floors or roofs. I keep saying walls, but it's actually black for everything, all the categories. So the main thing is that we want to change the cut pattern to be black for all of the categories that we input here. So this is the overrides input. Then we have this last input called hide, and by default, this is false. And what this means is that everything that will change black in the end could be hidden or could be just there, not hidden. For us, we don't want to hide anything. Of course, we want them to show on our drawings. Otherwise, what's the use of the script. So we will keep it as the default. And if I hover over it, you could read the description. Default value, so if true, given, category will be hidden. And then it says default value is false. So for us being false, so it will stay there, not be hidden. It's great, so we don't have to worry about it. Okay, so now that we kind of understand the inputs and what we need in order to satisfy this node and in order to develop the script, we could start by filling one input at a time. And let's start with the first one, which is views. So right now, there are so many different ways in Revit to do this override. You could do it on maybe a specific amount of views, like maybe only my outline proposal views, or maybe only my working views, which are working views NE. So I have so many working views here. So maybe I don't want to apply it to all of these working views that are in my Revit project. But for now, we will, of course, talk about filtering and how to get specific items later. But let's keep it very simple for now and very basic. And let's imagine that we want to apply this to all of our views. Okay, so I would like to go back to Dynamo and try to imagine how could I get all of the views that I have in Revit into Dynamo. So an easy way to do that is, again, go to search option and then write categories. And then I get I select the first option. And then with this categories node, if I click on the drop-down list, I see all of the categories that I have in my Revit project. So just imagine all of the categories that you get in Revit are exactly the same as they are in Dynamo, but it's just represented in a different way, in a node representation or a visual representation. So right now I need my views. So my category has to be views. So if I click on V on my keyboard, and then I just scroll a little bit down, I select views, and I have it selected now. I have all the category is now there. But if I pin this, okay, so maybe something we missed out or we missed to talk about is that when you have a node, you have inputs and then you have outputs and then you have something here, results. So this is what the node is doing for you. Right now it says function because I haven't done any work onto this node, but over here I have selected the views, so my result is views. But I don't want to only have a category. I want the views themselves. And for me to get those views themselves, I have to use another node called all elements of category. And it's right here. So if I connect these two together, and the way to connect two nodes together is to click on one output and input it into the input of the other node. So then let's see here. And now if you can notice, if I pin this, you just hover over it and then you pin it from here. You click on this button. So these are all the views I have in my Revit project. And I can see here that I have 81 views. So that's quite nice. I have all my views. And this is what I mean by I want to get the views themselves, not just the category. So I have specified the category and then I'm getting all the elements of that category, which is all of my views for that case. So one problem that I could see right now is the first result, which is null. And you will come across this and maybe understand it much better when you use Dynamo more. But null basically means invalid, I think. And this is basically one view in Revit that is not valid. So I have to get rid of this. And if you don't get rid of all the null values that you get in your results, it can cause some implications and it will screw up your script sometimes, but fortunately it's very easy to remove them. And there are, of course, so many different ways of removing it, but to keep it simple as well, I will just show you a node called remove nulls, and it's a packaged node, which is not so good, but I want to just keep it simple for today and later show you how to get rid of null values without using a packaged node. So a packaged node is basically something you get from the libraries that Christoph was talking about, just in case you're wondering. But yes, and all the other nodes that you get from Dynamo that's just the default nodes. So I will connect these two together, and let me have a look at the results. If you notice, the first value was null, and now I don't have it anymore. So it kind of cleans my lists. So it gets rid of all the values that were null over here and gives me a cleaner list of all my views without any nulls. So that's perfect for me. Okay, so this is all I need to get my views. So I can see that my workspace is set to automatic, and I don't want it to be automatic because then it will keep running all the time automatically. So I will set it back to manual. So every time I want to run it to get some results, I will click on the button here. So yes, so let's connect this to the views. Now we have our first part of the script, or our first part of this main node done. We have all our views gathered, and we input it now here because we have it ready. So let's move on to the second part, which is the categories part. As I mentioned before, if I go back to Revit, I want, or actually let me open a window view so you could see both my floor plan and section. I want all of my floors, all of my roofs, and all of my walls to be black. And there's a very easy way to specify them as a category. And it's basically using the same node that I used here in the views. But instead of selecting views, I will select walls, roofs, and floors. But how to get it again? You could always, of course, search categories and then click on it again. But sometimes you want to do it really fast. So there's a way to copy things in Dynamo. You just click on it, anything that you want to copy, and then you use Control-C and then Control-V for paste. And then you have it there. You can always Control-V like a few times. I want it to be 3 times because I have 3 categories. And then I'll just move them a little bit down. And I will change from views. I want walls. So I will just type in walls. And then I want floors. And then I want roofs. Okay, so these are my 3 categories that I want to apply. Of course, you can always add more things like foundations, or it depends on your project. But for me right now, I want to keep it simple. So I will just have 3 categories. Okay, so now comes a little bit of a tricky part, which is the categories over here is only, there's only 1 input for it, but I have 3 things that I want to specify as categories. So I cannot put more than 1 thing in the same space, in the same input. If you can see, I can try to add them, but it doesn't work in Dynamo like that. I have to find a way to combine these 3 nodes into 1 node that I could use to add as a category. And there's an easy way of doing that, and it is by creating a list. So if I search for list create, I click here, I get this node that can combine nodes for me and combine them into a list, forming 1 list, and then ending up with 1 output that I could easily connect to my nodes. So the way this works is, if I zoom in, you get a plus and minus buttons. So the plus button you can keep adding as much inputs as you want. Let's imagine I have 100 categories, but for now I only have 3. But if you have so many, you could always add as much as you want. You could always remove depending on how much you want. So now I want 3. So I'll just keep it with this, with these 3 items. And then I will connect them 1 by 1. Like this, and then I will run the script, and if I pin my result to see what happens, I can see that now I have a list with floors, with walls, floors, and roofs in 1 node instead of 3 nodes, which is great, and I can use this now as my categories input. Okay, so that's great. Now I have specified my views, I specified my categories. I only need to do the last step, which is to make them black, which is to do the step where I was showing you. So to, if you click on a wall, then you override, the cut pattern should be black. And that's what I want to do. And I want the color to be black as well. But I don't want to do that in Revit. I am just showing you in order to visualize what we are going to do in Dynamo. So we want the cut pattern to be solid fill and the color of the cut pattern to be black. So how to do that? I will escape and I'll go back to Dynamo. And I want to try to think of a way of getting all of these override settings that I just saw in Revit, but inside of Dynamo. Because the idea of Dynamo is not, it is a plugin in Revit. So everything that you are getting in Dynamo is actually a part of your Revit project. So it's not really something out of the project. So for me, I already know a node that gives me all these settings, and it's called overrides graphic.
There's a question in the chat
Yes.
from Jakub, who asks if you can connect all the categories to the nodes without creating a list first.
Yes.
Yeah, and my answer would be that you have to, in this case, where we are choosing the categories, you have to create a list, or you can call it upon by name.
Yes.
Using a different node. So there is also a second option to do that. And a second question from, I guess, is what are these at L1, at L2 in the result view for?
Oh, okay. These are levels. So these are basically a part of your list. So this is the list that you get as a result. And then you get L2 and L1. These are levels. And if you really are interested to know more about levels, we are actually going to have our next session very detailed about levels and explanation. So stay tuned and join us on the next session to know more.
Definitely worth it.
Yes, definitely. So if you are curious, just join us next session and then you will understand what they mean exactly. But in general, they are levels in case you want to research before the session. So any more questions?
Not at the moment.
Okay, great. So we can move on. So where we stopped was to get the settings of the overrides, and the node is called it's this one. It's called overrides graphics by properties. And again, as I mentioned before, don't worry about knowing which node to look for and which node to use. Eventually, with time, you will get familiar. You will familiarize yourself with all of the nodes in Dynamo. So yes, so this is the node that we are going to use. Now this can look a bit weird at first because it's represented in a different format, but these options are exactly what you would get in Revit. So if I kind of show you again, if I right click on any element in Revit and then I click on overrides in graphics view, you have element and you have by category. And right now what we are doing here in Dynamo is by category because we are specifying the categories. So it's like doing it in Revit but choosing this option by category. So what I was talking about is these settings that you have here: surface patterns, the colors, the transparency, the halftone option. They are exactly the same as here. So you can see halftone, transparency, all of the weights, the patterns, the colors. They are exactly the same as the ones you see in Revit. They are just represented in a Dynamo visual format, you could say. So I just wanted to show you how it looks like in Revit so you could visualize more or less what we are trying to do right now. Now that I have all my settings, I could start defining the color, which is black, and defining my pattern to be solid fill. And the way the nodes that I could use is the first one, which is color. I will also go to the search and write color and see what I get. With color, you get so many different options, to be honest, and it's very personal. You could choose whatever you want. You could, if you have a code for your color, you could always input it. But for now, I will use a color palette because it's very easy. So if I click on the drop down, I can see all the colors in the world, but I only want black. So I will choose black, and then I will connect it to my cut fill pattern because I want my cut pattern to be black. So everything that cuts through this plans or sections will be black. And the second thing I need is my cut fill pattern. So the color is black, but the pattern is solid fill. So how to do that? I will try to search fill pattern. And yes, I get this node with another drop-down list of all the patterns that I have in Revit. And actually, if I again minimize and show you what you get in Revit, these patterns here are exactly the same as the oops, what happened? These patterns here are exactly the same. Oh, okay, I'm pressing F1 instead of escaping. Sorry, guys. So these patterns again here are the same as the ones you get in Dynamo. So I want solid fill. And in Revit, you would just click solid fill here, but I won't do that. I just wanted to show you what it means. So my fill pattern is solid fill. I will just connect it to cut fill pattern. And I have my overrides ready. Color is ready and the fill pattern is ready. I can now connect it to my overrides, right? So that's great. We have views, we have categories, we have our overrides set. Last part is the hide option, which I more or less mentioned before. I will explain it again in case you couldn't catch it at that point. But basically, this means that right now, all of these walls and floors and roofs will become black, right? So do I want to hide them when they become black? Of course, no. So by default, it says no. So it will not hide anything for me. If I run the script now, nothing will be hidden. But in case, let's imagine I want to hide them, I could always change this from false to true. And how to do that? I also go to the search button again, and I write Boolean. And if you don't know what Boolean is, Boolean just means true or false. So it gives me a node where I could click on true or click on false. Right now, it's automatically set as false. So if I don't put anything here, it will be false. So nothing will be hidden. But if I say true and if I connect it, then everything I have in my project will be hidden. So that's the way to change the value. But right now, I don't need this because it's false. So I don't want it to be hidden. And then the magic happens where we run the script and see if it works or if it doesn't work. But yes, let me try to show you a view where you could see both Revit and Dynamo. Okay. Okay, so over here I have my plan and over here I have my section. Now that if I run this, everything should be black. Everything that I specified should be black, all the walls or all the categories, everything. Oh, and one thing I forgot to do before I run the script, it's super important to click on your node, right click, go to lacing, and do it as cross product. And if you are curious about lacing again, join us on the next session because we will explain to you what it means and all the options that you get with lacing. As I mentioned before, we want this to be simple and one step at a time. So let's not rush into lacing from now. But for this to work, I have to have it as cross product. So this is like a sneak peek for you to get an idea of what we will do next session. Okay, now it's cross product. It should work now. So let's minimize and run the scripts. Exactly. So let me just get out of Dynamo and go to my floor plan. You see all of my floors, all of my walls are black. In my section, everything is black. And it's applied to all of the views. And I can check if I exit my tile view. And I go to any of the working views, let's say section 2, maybe. It's black, let's say floor plan 4. It's black, everything is black. So no matter which view I open, it should be black. And this is exactly what I wanted. And I have so many views. I have like, I have floor plans here as well. I have like so many sections because these are working views. And of course, you never apply these to working views. Don't get the wrong message, but I am only showing you this as an example. In case you had, let's imagine all of these views, right now they are working views, but let's imagine they are outline proposal views. And then it makes sense to apply the script to it. But yes, yes, that's exactly the concept of the script. And It is to change all of the categories that I want to appear in my outline proposal drawings to be black, and then run it or do it in a way that is super simple, super fast, not time consuming, and makes my life easier. So that's a sneak peek of what Dynamo could help you in the future. One last thing before we go to the Q&A. Right now, if you look at this, it looks a little bit messy, and at least for my eyes. But if you don't care, it doesn't matter. But there is actually a really cool way to organize your workspace in Dynamo. And to do that, you get something called grouping. So you could group things together and have them separated or have them more organized in your workspace. So I want to group, and of course, grouping is very different from person to person. You can group whatever you want. But for me right now, I want to group the nodes that I use to get my views together. So I will select them. You can select them in different ways. And then I will right click on one of the nodes. And then I will click create group. Then it creates a group around these 3 nodes. And the idea of this is to kind of be have them more accessible, have them more grouped or just together. Also, this could be named. So because I'm getting all my views, I could call this maybe get all views. Also, I could click on it, right click, and then change the colors, maybe to gray or something. It depends on you. And these colors, I think they have a meaning from Autodesk, which we could discuss at a later stage, but they are not random. They all have a meaning, and it depends from company to company. Some companies define them as different things, but it's really cool to get into this. Also, you could change the font size of the heading. You could ungroup it again. I don't want to ungroup it. You could clean it, so they are more cleaned, which is great. And yes, I could do this for the rest. I could group these again and have them here, and then I could group my overriding options or nodes again, and then I could rename them eventually. And that's a good way of cleaning up your space and having everything more eye-pleasing. Yes, I think that's all we have for today's session. I hope you got a good overview of what you can do. We can move on to the Q&A now.
And as Nuhat said, that this is, for example, very small script, so grouping is not that necessary for it to be clear. But you can imagine that when you're working with scripts which contains over 100 nodes, then it's quite good to actually group it together and clean up your workspace, because you can get lost in your own scripts. There's a couple of questions that showed up in the chat that I didn't want to pull out during your presentation, Nuhat, so we can take them now.
Okay.
And we can start with people asking about some additional courses. How can they start learning Dynamo, except of course with us? So there's 2 ways. I would recommend 2 places to look into it. I'll just share my screen.
Yes.
I saw Jesper already linking it to the chat. But there is something called Dynamo Primer. And this is basically a guide prepared by Autodesk, if I'm correct. Yes. So this guide, I'm gonna send the link into the chat.
This is quite a really useful resource to use. I personally use it all the time. It is the best explanation you could get for Dynamo. Exactly. And they are the creators of Dynamo, so they know it more than anyone else. So it's like the book of everything you need. It's like a guide for you. So always use that.
It's quite long, but it means that there's a lot of very useful information in it. And the second place where I would suggest you to look for information, if you don't like reading, but would you prefer someone speaking to you? It's on LinkedIn Learning. There's 2 courses, if I believe, and you just can look into Dynamo, and there's Dynamo 2.x Essential Training, and there's also Dynamo Rabbit Workflow. I can link both of them to you. The courses are not that long. I think they are about 2 hours each.
I think the essential course is like 4 hours, and then the next one is a bit shorter. But yeah, they're not that long. It's not like the Revit courses, so Yeah.
In case you prefer someone actually speaking to you instead of reading, and you can follow along also with these courses,
Yeah.
this is also a good way to start it, to look for all the information.
Exactly, yes.
Some of the questions that appeared throughout the presentation is that people asked about the remove nulls nodes that you used. As Nuh had mentioned, that this node came actually from the package.
Yes.
So it's not a default node that is out of the box, as we call it, by default inside of Dynamo. We didn't want this view was unpredicted. We didn't expect that to happen, to have a null in a list. That's why Nuh just had to quickly do something about it.
Yeah.
But yes, to answer one of the questions in the chat, whether you can do that without a package, it is possible.
Of course.
You just have to use filtering to do that, and we're gonna touch upon that on the next sessions as well.
Yes, so join us
tuned.
as well to know different ways of not using a package nodes to address that problem. So yes, we cannot show you all the possibilities from the first session. So that's why we have 3 sessions. But yes, that's a really good question. Do we have more questions?
I think there was a few more, and I see that they are coming.
Yes.
How can you see which scripts are running in one project? I think there is no actual way to see whether someone is using Dynamo script or not. But if you want to see if there have been any changes to the project recently by you, if you would look into Revit, I'm just going to share my screen real quick. If you would see into Revit and you would drop down a button here to see the last changes, to undo something, then you will see that there is an entry called Dynamo list, like series of number or digits and script. So it means that something has been done in the project by script, but it's only by you. So you can't really see if somebody else really used any script.
Yeah. I could see another question saying that I have a warning, says warning view set category overrides operation failed, and it's specified view template is not valid for the view. Make sure you don't have any view templates applied to the views that you are running the script on, and also make sure that there is no null values on your list, so then it should work without any errors. But yes.
Yeah. And Khalid asking, how many Dynamo packages required to install for a small project? As we mentioned in the beginning, like we try in the Dynamo Cafe, we are trying to achieve everything with out of the box nodes, so everybody can use the script at any time. So you don't have to download anything from the package manager.
Yeah, but sometimes you reach a point where you need something that is ready for you, because it can make your script much easier, and it can make it much shorter. So you're kind of skipping some steps, but make sure you use it when you really need it. Otherwise, it's not really good to get used to those package nodes. But yes, it depends on your project, how big your script is, how much you need the package nodes. There's no straight answer for that, I think.
Yeah, of course, sometimes you can realize that Dynamo doesn't really include the default nodes which you at that moment need. So sometimes it is quite strange that you notice that something is missing in the library, even it's for you it would seem obvious that it's easy to get. So it also touches on what kind of script you want to build for your company or for your student project.
Yeah, and I could also read that someone is asking about the recording. So if at some point this course right now, Dynamo from Zero to Hero, is taking place with 3 sessions. So this is the first session today. Then we have 2 next sessions that come not next Tuesday, the Tuesday after, so the 6th of October, if I'm correct. In order for you to catch up, in case you cannot join us live, you could always watch our recordings because it's recorded. So where would they be placed? When I end this meeting, I will stop the recording, of course, and then you could rewatch it on this chat. So it would be there. And we could also share the recording on Dynamo Cafe Teams. So you could always go to Dynamo Cafe Teams, click on the link, and rewatch whatever you want. Yes. So that should be it.
Yeah, and Lars is asking, what package does the remove nulls node come from?
What again?
What package does the node remove nulls is coming from? Was it a
Lunchbox? Yes,
Lunchbox,
it's
yes.
Lunchbox. Yes. So yes, sometimes you need to, because they are package nodes, you always need to make sure that you're using the updated version, because if you use the old versions, it might not work. So if you're having an issue with that package node, try to update the package and see if it works after the update. So that should be a helpful tip for those having problems.
And Fanny asking that he's using a Revit of 2019.2 version, but his Dynamo is still in the old version. How can he upgrade it? I'm not sure if you can really upgrade. 2019 comes with Dynamo integrated already, or was it still separate?
I'm actually not sure of that, because I wasn't using Dynamo when I had Revit 2019. Okay. So
because from 2020 it comes integrated, and there's no actual way of upgrading it if Autodesk doesn't release any patches to it. But I think
it does come integrated from 2019, but you also have the opportunity to update it yourself from there. But then after 2020, it's like fixed in. You cannot update it. You cannot touch anything in the plugin itself. So I would suggest you maybe try to upgrade your Revit. It fixes it much easily. But if you don't want to update your Revit, of course, it's fine. Just make sure you have a pretty recent Dynamo update. But I don't know how to do that, because I've never used Dynamo on 2019. So maybe we could address that in the next session and discuss how to do that.
Definitely. I am asking, how is the learning curve in Dynamo? From myself, I would say that learning the actual how Dynamo functions is quite easy. It takes only a few hours, but what really takes time is to get yourself familiar with all the nodes which are available in the Dynamo, and the more time you spend in Dynamo, the better you're gonna be. That's the truth. Practice makes perfect.
Yeah, so, but I would, to be very realistic, I will not tell you that it's super easy and it's like straightforward from the beginning. It is easy if you give it so much time and patience. But it really needs time, and at first you might not know what you're doing. It's more like experimental at first. You're trying to discover everything and what does each node do and everything. So give it some time, and then at some point you will develop your own script, and then you will get this motivation that now I have this will or this chance of creating things in Dynamo, or I understand it much better. So then you will it slowly will click, and it slowly will become better. So it takes time, but it's not that difficult.
And it's definitely worth it.
Yes, definitely, yes.
Emil asking, can you make a fully ready house in Dynamo, and would it make sense to do that? Well, the answer is definitely you can do that. Is it worth it? Not really, I would say. Because as much as you can model through Dynamo, it's not a very efficient way. You would do that 10 times faster and 10 times better manually.
Yeah. The thing is with Dynamo, it's a program for automation. It's not a program to do all your work, of course. It's to automate your work. So if you have, let's say, if you need to create 10,000 sheets, which never happens, but let's say you wanted to create that. Of course, it's impossible to do that fast in Revit. So that's when you use Dynamo, or when you want to manage the data in your parameters. You want to have your parameters with certain values or certain numbers or whatever it is. Then you use Dynamo to do it fast for you. So it's like data management things. Also, sometimes people model with Dynamo, but I don't have much experience with that. And I know that there are much better softwares than Dynamo that can take care of design and modeling and all that.
Of course, new Revits come with generative design, I believe that's how it's called. So it's also an option to somehow help you with modeling. It's
important to understand what it is and why to use it, than just use it for everything.
And we have someone asking, could we learn Revit API easily? Yeah, that is a question that I can answer that. Because of Dynamo, I started also learning how to actually code, first with Python, because you can use Python to code through Dynamo. but at the moment also trying to learn C#, in which it's necessary to of course know Revit API. And it works the same like with Dynamo. You have to first learn how the program works, how the software works. So in this case, you have to understand how the language works.
Yeah.
And afterwards, you just have to get yourself familiar with all the functions and methods which are available in the API library.
Yeah.
So easily, I wouldn't say easily. You gotta put some hours to actually do that. But even with basic knowledge, you could manage to do some quite cool things.
But that's what makes Dynamo powerful, because Dynamo is actually a great way for us who don't have experience with any coding or any API or like coding languages or programming. It's because it's literally programming, but in a user-friendly way where we could just visualize it and see what's happening instead of reading out a line of code that doesn't make sense, right? So
exactly. Not everyone likes to look at lines of codes.
Yeah. So I would say just stick with the resource Dynamo. And if you're interested in learning coding, of course, it's always a plus. But yes.
Khalid, to become an expert of Dynamo, do we need to learn Python and API? Is it interconnected? If it's interconnected, yes, but do you need it? Not really.
No.
Of course, some things cannot be achieved with basic Dynamo, so you have to go to packages. To be able to do something. So only in this case, if you don't want to use the packages, as we at Dynamo Cafe, we try to avoid them. So therefore, we, for example, try to also introduce Python to our workflow, so we can exchange the nodes from the packages with Python code instead.
Exactly.
But as long as you do it for yourself and you, for example, don't intend to share it with somebody else, it's good to go with any type of packages that you want, and you can achieve pretty much everything with the packages.
Yes. Okay, we have another question. How can the Dynamo be used for preparing the room schedule and other schedules? You could, of course, create schedules with Dynamo and manage your schedules in Dynamo. I would say it's great to create schedules, but I would say Dynamo is much better to manage your schedule or to manage the parameters in your schedule. And we could address that at a later session. After this course, we have Dynamo Tuesdays, where we script much more in depth and much less simple, I would say. So then we could maybe talk about scheduling.
We'll make sure that we're gonna come up with some bigger scripts after the first 2 sessions to also illustrate for you what you can actually achieve with Dynamo.
Yes.
Is it possible to share and save scripts? Yes, it works as a it's how to say, like each script is sort of a project, so you can save it and you can reuse it in different projects. Yes. But it's also quite important to notice that some scripts that you make will be project specific. Yeah. So you can only utilize it in one type of the project. And what we try to achieve, that we are making scripts which can be reused in pretty much all of the projects that we would see fit. Exactly. Sometimes from experience, you will at the beginning you will start creating scripts that are maybe more project specific, which is good. It's a good practice, of course. But eventually you will realize that all the time you wasted on that script, it was only relevant to one project, which is not that great. Of course, it's great, but let's try to develop that and make it not project specific or applying to everything. And that's where you discover the power of Dynamo, like doing one script that could apply anywhere. Exactly. And that's just crazy. It's but yes, you could always do project specific or not project specific. And of course, making non-project specific will come with a cost, because it's a bit more difficult to do that, because you have to predict what the user will try to input into your script, what kind of model he'll be dealing with. But yeah, after some tries, if you'll try to do something like this a few times, then it'll be quite easy for you to figure out what to expect. Yes. All right, I think that's all for the questions. Thank you all for engaging. It was great hosting this session, and see you next time. I will end this recording. You can always access it from the chat after I stop it. And yes, thank you all so much, and see you next session. Thank you very much, guys.